Assalamu alaikum and thanks for joining us for this week's episode of Roundup.
Today we've got some really interesting reports for you from around the globe. But before we jump into them, let's take a look at some important headlines from this week.
COVID cases in England are now the highest among children aged 5 to 9. Many countries have been experiencing a surge in COVID cases. Austria just announced a new national lockdown and a vaccine mandate for all. German Chancellor Angela Merkel said that this wave of COVID is hitting Germany with full force.
Die gegenwärtige Pandemielage in Deutschland ist dramatisch, ich kann es nicht anders sagen.
As of November 15th, Fortnite, one of the world's most popular video games, has officially been switched off for players across China. In line with the pre-announced shutdown, players are now no longer able to log on to the game. A state of emergency has been declared in the Canadian western province of British Columbia after a major storm cut road and rail links in the region. According to sources, the Canadian Armed Forces have been deployed to help stranded residents trapped after the storm hit last Sunday. A group of Afghan girl footballers and their families have been safely flown into the UK, marking the end of an extraordinary rescue effort that began after the Taliban seized power. The 32 teenage players, their families and the other staff had been stuck in limbo after fleeing their homes back in August. Last year, former cricketer Azim Rafiq accused Yorkshire County Cricket Club of racism. An inquiry had been launched which found that the player had been subjected to racial harassment and bullying on several occasions. On Monday, his testimony was heard at a parliamentary hearing, after which the current and former chair of Yorkshire are now facing questioning by MPs. However, on Thursday, Mr. Rafiq was forced to accept his own shortcomings after The Times shared an old Facebook exchange between him and former cricketer Atiq Javed, where Mr. Rafiq made anti-Semitic comments. He has since released a public apology for using racist slurs.
Now, in just a couple days, millions of Americans will gather with their families and friends to celebrate Thanksgiving, an annual holiday in the United States. But what's the actual history of this holiday?
For a deeper look, let's check out this report from our US reporter Daniel.
Next week, Americans will eat a total of 46 million turkeys. It is, after all, Thanksgiving, one of the most popular American holidays. Clearly we're excited for the food, but does anyone actually know what we're celebrating?
So in the fall 1621,
pilgrims, they came from England to Plymouth Rock in Massachusetts.
After many weeks of starvation, they met a village of Native Americans who they formed an alliance with.
And they became friends with the Native Americans and they started trading.
It was rough for the pilgrims during the winters. The Native Americans, they taught the settlers like how to grow crops.
And there was one particular Native American who taught them how to grow corn and crops. And towards the end of the season in fall, where they harvested the corn, they invited them and had a great feast with them.
That feast lasted 3 days and is what we know Thanksgiving today.
Okay, so Thanksgiving is a time to give thanks for the harvest and to remember the pilgrims who traveled from Europe to the New World in a feast of turkey, mashed potatoes, and apple pie with their new indigenous friends. Okay, so that doesn't quite sound right. I'm thinking maybe we consult an expert.
There's two sides of every story. The story that we hear about Thanksgiving in America is that, everything was happy and dandy. They broke bread together, they had food together, they all celebrated for 3 days. But if you look at the history of the Native Americans in America, we see a completely different picture. They don't celebrate Thanksgiving. They actually commemorate a day called the Day of Mourning. What the true or the realities of Thanksgiving were, which if you continue reading history, you'll see that after this, when the ship landed in 1621 or 1620, so many atrocities took place with the Native Americans. Their cities were destroyed, their people were killed. So these people who came to the new America, coming for a new life, in reality, were not nice people, right? They were here to survive, and people would do anything to survive. So when we celebrate Thanksgiving, we only see one picture of Thanksgiving. We don't see the other side of Thanksgiving, of what those people did to survive. This is a second portion of Thanksgiving that's hidden from our history that we don't talk about too often. Thanksgiving is an opportunity for us to not only be thankful to Allah Ta'ala, but help others who are in need, right? Those people who don't have that much to be thankful for, give them a reason to be thankful.
Okay, so now that we know how to celebrate Thanksgiving, how do we mark this day?
Many jamaats in America, across America, we go to food shelters and homeless shelters, we prepare food for them, and we hand it out. So I think that's very important for us to keep in mind as Ahmadi Muslims, that this is not a day for us just to be happy with ourselves, but to make other people happy as well. And this is a day where we can go and serve our community to the best of our ability.
We usually just give thanks for Allah because He's given us a lot of stuff. We've got a masjid, we've got a jamaat, we've got like family.
We can thank Allah every single day instead of just on Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is also every day.
Basically give thanks to like family, relatives, Allah, and basically everyone.
Well, Jazakallah Daniel, that was incredibly informative, and one of the things that we're especially thankful for all year round is the words of wisdom,
which we are fortunate to hear from our beloved Huzoor. May Allah be his helper. Let's have a recap of Huzoor's Friday sermon.
Assalamu alaikum, my dear brothers and sisters. Last Friday, Huzoor continued to speak about Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, the second Khalifa of Islam. During this week's Friday sermon, our beloved Huzoor mentioned that there were great opponents of Islam who went through massive spiritual transformations, not only for themselves, but also became a way for others to change. Huzoor added that if one truly wanted to, in this day and age, they could do the same as well. One such example from the companions of the Holy Prophet ﷺ was Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu. Before Hazrat Umar accepted Islam, one day he actually set out to kill the Holy Prophet ﷺ. However, after hearing that his sister and her husband had accepted Islam, he went to visit them first. He reached their home and heard the verses of the Holy Quran being recited. He confronted his sister and her husband. He then asked to listen to the same verses that were being recited, upon which tears started to fall from the eyes of Hazrat Umar. He then went to the Holy Prophet ﷺ, and rather than attacking him, he pledged allegiance to him and joined Islam. Did you know it was the verses of chapter 20 of the Holy Quran, also known as Surah Taha, which Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu listened to and felt moved by before his acceptance of Islam? Beloved Huzoor, Ayyadallahu Ta'ala bin Nasir al-Aziz, also narrated an incident which highlighted Hazrat Umar's care for the elderly. Huzoor said once someone saw Hazrat Umar entering a home during the night. When he left, that person went into the home and found a blind elderly lady. He asked her why Hazrat Umar used to come to her home. She replied, saying that for quite some time he had been helping her with various tasks and needs. My dearest brothers and sisters, this is such a beautiful example for us to follow and learn from. Despite the status of Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu to please Allah, he would take care of the elderly and look after them. He would also do this in a way that people would not find out, so that he could gain Allah's happiness. Beloved Huzoor, Ayyadallahu Ta'ala bin Nasir al-Aziz, also mentioned some incidents which related to Hazrat Umar's prayers being accepted by God. Huzoor said once there was a famine, and so Hazrat Umar went out to pray for rain. As he was praying, it started to rain and people became very happy. Dearest brothers and sisters, this was just a brief summary of last week's Friday sermon, which was filled with many interesting stories and incidents. We hope you are able to hear the full Friday sermon, which can be found on mta.tv. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum.
Hey Jangir, before we go to our next report, I've got a joke for you.
Here we go.
What did the horse say when it fell?
Wait, let me get ready to laugh. What did the horse say?
I've fallen and I can't get it up.
Ha ha ha. Well, that was funny. So our next report, which is about horses, is brought to us by Germany. Let's watch and learn more about these amazing mammals. You need to work on your jokes.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Mein Name ist Kamran. Ich bin 14 Jahre alt und in meiner Freizeit spiele ich gerne Fußball und kümmere ich mich um unsere Pferde. Einer unserer 3 Pferde ist unser weibliches Pferd Farida. Sie ist 6 Jahre alt und ist ein reinrassiges deutsches Kaltblut. In der Woche isst Farida ca. 200 Kilogramm Heu und trinkt bis zu 40 Liter Wasser am Tag. Daher kommt es auch, dass sie ca. 1 Tonne wiegt, aber das ist normal für ihre Rasse. Sie ist ein sehr neugieriges Pferd und wenn man mit ihr rausgeht, um mit ihr reiten zu gehen, mag sie es nicht, wenn sie alleine ist und fängt dann an, ihre Freunde zu rufen. Das tut sie, indem sie wiehert. Die Rasse der Kaltblüter ist eine Arbeiterrasse. Sie wurden früher von Bauern benutzt, da es noch keine Traktoren gab. Wir haben Pferde aus dem Grund, da unser geliebter Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam auch Pferde hatte und dieser auch regelmäßig geritten ist. Wir machen das, Alhamdulillah, auch.
Jazakallah, Kamran. And as always, Jazakallah to all of our viewers for contributing and sending in your views on the topics we talk about.
We love to hear what you have to say. And for this week, you sent us your thoughts on this week's topics.
Assalamu alaikum. People may have different opinions on how the holiday Thanksgiving started, but for me, it's a day of giving thanks to our friends, neighbors, and family, and more importantly, to thank God. But as Muslims, we are taught to be thankful to God every single day. We try hard to pray every day, and we say Jazakallah in return of every kindness. The Quran says, if you are grateful, then surely I will bestow more favors upon you. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, said, one who is not grateful to others is not grateful to God. Jazakallah.
Thanksgiving is a holiday which I do not celebrate. Instead of having one day where I give thanks to my God every day, 5 times a day when I pray. Muslims can pray extra nawafil to give more thanks to Allah whenever they want. So why only give thanks 1 time a year for what we have?
Remember to keep an eye out on our social media at Roundup MTA on Twitter and Instagram for a preview of our topics, so you can have a chance to be featured. Jinnah, you may remember that in one of our previous episodes of Roundup, we went all the way to Germany for an Atfal virtual mulaqat, which was with our beloved Huzoor, may Allah be his helper.
I do actually, which is why for our next report, we head over to Germany once again for another virtual mulaqat, this time with Nasirat.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Mein Name ist Aisarai und heute bin ich hier in Mannheim. Wir haben heute eine Class mit dem Pferde Huzoor. Ich freue mich, euch mitzunehmen.
Rund 535 Nasirat reisten ab 8:45 Uhr in Mannheim an, um an der segenreichen Audienz mit dem geliebten Huzoor Dala bin Aziz teilzunehmen. Die Mehrheit der Nasirat reiste in 9 Bussen aus ganz Deutschland an. Nach Anmeldung erhielten die Nasirat ihre Namensschilder und einheitliche Kopftücher. Die Nasirat warteten im Gedenken Allahs und voller Spannung auf den Beginn des mulaqat. Huzoor Abdallah bin Abdelaziz begrüßte die Teilnehmerinnen mit Assalamu alaikum. Das Mulaqat begann mit der Rezitation aus dem Heiligen Koran, gefolgt von der deutschen und Urdu-Übersetzung und einem Gedicht vom verheißenen Messias a.s.w. Dann erhielten 16 Nasirat die Möglichkeit, ihre Fragen an Huzoor Abdallah bin Abdelaziz zu stellen und ihre Anliegen zu schildern. Mit viel Liebe beantwortete Huzoor Abdallah bin Abdelaziz die Fragen der Nasirat. Somit konnten alle Nasirat von den wertvollen Anweisungen unseres geliebten Imams profitieren und die Segnungen des Khilafat genießen. Huzoor Abdallah bin Abdelaziz gewährte durch seine Güte etwa 1 Stunde seiner wertvollen Zeit. Nach dem Mulaqat waren die Nasirat überwältigt und voller Dankbarkeit, dass sie durch die Gnade Allahs diese wundervolle und gesegnete Möglichkeit erhalten hatten.
Assalamu alaikum. Alhamdulillah hatte ich heute die Möglichkeit, Huzoor eine Frage zu stellen. Vor Huzoor zu stehen war ein sehr aufregendes Gefühl und meine Beine haben auch etwas gezittert. Und man hat sich aber trotzdem sehr gefreut, dass man die Möglichkeit hatte, Huzoor eine Frage zu stellen.
Es hat mich wirklich sehr glücklich gemacht, dass ich ihn sehen konnte. Es hat sehr viel Spaß gemacht.
Dass wir überhaupt die Möglichkeiten hatten, in diesem Jahr ein Meeting mit Huzoor zu haben, war sehr schön und sehr aufregend für mich. Ich war auch wirklich sehr nervös. Und ich habe sogar auch meine alten Nasirat-Freunde getroffen.
Jetzt kommen wir auch schon zum Schluss. Ich fand das Online-Class mit Huzoor sehr, sehr schön. 2 Jahre haben wir ihn nicht gesehen und auch heute dürfen wir ihn, auch wenn es online war, sehen. Ich habe mich sehr gefreut. Es war ein Gefühl, das unbeschreibbar ist. Ich danke auf jeden Fall der Jamaat auch, dass wir überhaupt hier teilnehmen durften und dass sie es auch so schön organisiert haben.
Well, that's it for this episode of Roundup. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to join us next week when we'll be covering even more exciting topics from around the world.
As always, we love hearing what you have to say, so continue to send us your feedback on our social media channels or email us at roundup@mta.tv.
And until next week, Assalamu alaikum.
I shall call, I shall call, I shall call, I shall call, I shall call. Thy message to reach all the corners of the earth.